Welcome to NASPA Tonight. I'm your host, Josh Greenway. This is the live show where we talk about all things Scrabble news. NASPA Tonight, it's all your Scrabble news in 25 minutes or less. We've got a bunch of topics. We've got multiple guests tonight, so let's get right into it. Let's take a look at some headlines from this last weekend of play. And the first thing that we're going to take a look at, I love this picture. Cesar takes Manhattan. If you weren't following Cross Tables this weekend, you may have missed. Although if you were on Facebook, it'd be hard to miss. There were lots of posts and pictures of people celebrating that Cesar winning his first Collins tournament. And just a great picture. Look at Jesse Day there in the background, adding to the ambiance there. So that was Manhattan. That was run, I believe, by Cornelia Guest. Let's now talk about the Pacific Coast Open. This was the first year that event ran. They were able to attract, I think, 44 participants, which is excellent for a first-time tournament. And we had Edward de Guzman winning the TWL field and Conrad Bassett-Bouchard just destroying the Collins division and running his rating up to 2084, which caused him to muse on Facebook that about what his standings would be for the next Alchemist Cup in 2020. So, and we're hoping to have David Pearl on later in the show to talk about the first Pacific Coast Open. We'll see if we can make that connection happen. We also had, I've been talking about this tournament for a couple of weeks. We had the March Gladness, which was a tournament that was run in Illinois. I believe that was directed by Marty Gabriel. I think that I've got the right Marty there. And Chris Light had a really nice performance, running his rating up in the main event to 2034. And Kenton Plouse winning TWL. I was looking at his Cross Tables rating. He hasn't played a rated tournament in 16 years. This was the first one, and crushing it, taking Division I there. Also of interest in the Late Bird in Collins, we had Randy Dandy really have a great performance there, playing Chris Lipe for the win in the end there in the Late Bird. So a shout out to Randy as well. The other thing that we saw happen, I guess this was early this week, was we had NASPA Zizova finally being updated. So this was, depending on how you look at it, just in time for the release of the new lexicon or a day or two too late. So first of all, much love out there to Ross Brown, who leads the technical update for keeping Zizova up to date. That is a big project. And so he does a fantastic job. Also, I want to point out one of the things that we're seeing with this new lexicon is we're going from TWL to NWL, meaning the NASPA word list. And I think what's interesting here is NASPA is really making an intellectual property claim over the list. So I think, to me anyway, that portends some positive stuff going forward. And like I said, I'm glad that Zizova was out. It probably should have been out a few weeks before, and I certainly wouldn't put that on the tech team that was updating it. I would probably put that more on the advisory board, of which I'm a part, deciding on what the deadline was going to be for delivering this to players. And I certainly have some thoughts, and hopefully we'll talk about it, how to better roll that out in the future, how to decide the date to make sure people get Zizova on their laptops. Obviously, there were different ways of updating your lexicon. You could throw in a custom lexicon and do some different things so you could get access to the words. And thankfully as well, this was a relatively minor dictionary update. So I think that certainly helped people. But it's one of those things where, maybe a couple more weeks would have helped in this particular case. So that's something that I in particular am going to pursue. I want to say thanks to everybody for joining. We've got a lot of people here in comments. Also, a note to anyone out there that if you want to participate in the comments, if you want to ask our guests questions tonight, things like that, you can do that. Where we're going to be monitoring the comments is on my personal Facebook feed. So if you're watching on the NASPA group, the NASPA page, WESPA, Scrabble snippets, the place to fire off your comments is on my personal feed. But I want to say thank you to everybody for for joining. So we have one piece of feedback on intellectual property claims on the list. Andrew saying, tell NASPA to chill on it, but I actually think it portends good things. We've had some trouble in the past with intellectual property changes and access to the lexicon. That's not what this show is about, but I figured that it was news for this week. Maybe we'll do a whole show on lexicons and intellectual property rights, but that's not going to be tonight. So here we go. I want to introduce a very special guest who's joining us tonight. And the way that I want to show this is I want to show a clip from a show that ran a couple of weeks ago. So let's go to that clip. It's quite short, and then we will come back with our guest. So here we go. Beautiful. I noticed that James Curley just joined us on the show. And James, I don't even know if we've met, but I am a devout follower of James Curley's Facebook page. He was out in Hood River, and he had all these awesome photos from what was going on out there. Hood River is a tournament that, quite frankly, I will probably never get invited to, never mind never play. But it really looks fantastic. They've created a hell of an experience out there. All right, here we are. Here's James Curley, everybody. James, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks very much for joining the show. As you saw in the clip there, I was commenting 2 weeks ago about how much I was enjoying your social media updates from the Hood River tournament. And I really encourage everybody, if they're playing in tournaments, one of the best ways that we can get the word out about Scrabble, or certainly one of the kind of lowest hanging fruit, is, post it on your social media. Sure, you're going to catch your family and friends. They already know you play Scrabble. I get that, but we may be able to get them to try, and who knows. So I would encourage people to do that. And James, I really enjoyed you doing that. I want to take a closer look at a couple of those posts. But First, I wanted to kind of have you introduce yourself a little bit and then talk about your background, because you've played for a while, but you haven't played in a ton of tournaments. Why don't you start by telling us how you got your start with competitive Scrabble?
In Scrabble, 2008 was the first tournament, but I think I was going to club from 2007. So that was in New York, in Club 56, Midtown, Joel's Club.
Yeah.
And I'm from England, you may have noticed, from the voice or the teeth. And I never played Scrabble in England, but I knew it existed. Obviously, I knew the game existed, but I knew the tournament club scene existed because I'd been to watch this TV show called Countdown. My mum had won some raffle tickets to go and watch some, shows being aired. And I met, after that, in the meet and greet, I met Mark Nyman. And I remember him telling me about competitive Scrabble. So I knew about it since about 96. And I bought a Scrabble, I guess what we call it, the official word list or something.
Yes.
And I'd never played Scrabble, but I looked through the book. So I didn't really remember the book. I just looked at it from time to time.
Right. And that obviously you would have been at that time, it would have been Collins, or I don't know if it was still Sow.
That was Collins. Yes,
yeah.
Pods, yeah.
Absolutely. So all you were looking at was just sort of looking through the book. You were aware of competitive Scrabble. So
I looked up Retina.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. So tell me about the circumstances that brought you from England to New York. How did that move happen? And then
I got married. That's basically it.
Okay.
No, my wife and I are scientists, and so we were academics in Cambridge in England, and then we both got jobs in Columbia University in Manhattan. So that's why we came to. But my Scrabble actually started in Canada.
Oh, really?
Because my wife's actually from Toronto, Canada, and you know what that is, obviously.
I do. That's where I am now. Yeah.
Yeah. And one Christmas, I played against my mother-in-law Scrabble. She got it out, and I played, and I think I must have looked up the twos, or at least 5 threes. And I remember, winning and thinking maybe I should look into this. So actually, the next week, I think it must have been 2007, first week of January. I Googled New York Scrabble Club, and I wandered in to Honors Bridge Club, which is where they have it. And I remember thinking, and I don't think this is a common thought, but I remember thinking, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. So I loved it, and I went 1-3 that night.
Yes.
I beat Nancy Conopole, who I think she must have been only 1 or 2 months into playing Scrabble too at that time. So that was and then I went pretty much every week for quite a few years.
Wow. So anyway, I think that's really interesting. I still have yet to play at that New York club. I end up down in New York the odd time.
Oh, yeah, you should go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like it's one of those places that you should mark off your bucket list for sure.
Yeah, when you showed that picture of Cesar and Jesse, yes. I felt kind of sad because I love playing in those green chairs. Very comfortable.
Fantastic. Okay, so tell me again, how many years in New York? For playing.
Oh, Scrabble. I have to look at my cross tables to check this out. I probably only played for 3 or 4 years. It felt like a lot longer. I lived in New York for about 10, but I played. Yes. I stopped playing in 2012, but 2011 I switched to Collins.
Right.
So I didn't go to the club for the last year.
Yeah, and this is something that when we first were talking and getting to know each other a little bit, you said something like, unlike Cesar, you switched to Collins right away. So what prompted that move in 2011?
Yeah, I just ripped the Band-Aid off. Do you know, maybe just kind of feelings of grandeur maybe got me to do it. I think at the time, I only joined Facebook like a month ago, 2 months ago, to keep up with what's going on in the world of Scrabble. Yeah, yes. I haven't been on Facebook since. I'd never had a Facebook account, but I had a LiveJournal account way back when people were on LiveJournal. So, at that time, there's a lot of the people were talking about going to Worlds and all this, that, and the other. And I think I just thought, well, I'm British. It's in the DNA. I should probably play the British version at some point. And I thought, well, I just started playing it and enjoying it. So there was a massive downside, which is I couldn't play at club anymore. Because I'm not good enough to keep things separate. I just can't do it. So that was actually a real bummer. I liked going to the club, but I really liked playing Collins. So I just kept playing Collins. Well, until I stopped.
Gotcha. So then if we're talking about 2012, I believe that's sort of when there's a real break in your cross tables history, in your tournament history. So tell us about that break. You move out of New York City. There's some other life developments. Give us a little rundown of what a break in Scrabble looks like.
Well, I just had to make a decision. I had to stop because my daughter was born 6 months prior to that, something like that. I just started my professorship running my own lab. So, you're actually responsible for people. You have to get tenure. You have to do a lot of things. Yep. And then, it turned out Scrabble, it was only a hobby, it turned out, after all. It wasn't my life, sadly. So I just figured I couldn't do it. If I'd been playing TWL still, I probably could have kept up with club. That would have been fine. But because I'd switched and I just didn't play Scrabble, so I didn't study words for 5 years. I played Quackle every now and then. It's hard to uninstall that program. It's pretty. I just didn't really do anything. The weird thing was when I came back to start studying again, how many of the words just are still in your brain. It's amazing.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not amazing at Scrabble, but it amazed me how many were just stuck there.
Gotcha.
After 5 years.
So let's talk about your reemergence then. Obviously, you mentioned, right, in your answer, I'm not imagining it, that you had an addition to your family, right?
Yeah.
Over that time, which is fantastic. Yeah. So, but then now you're no longer in New York City. So tell us about that particular change.
Well, the chance came to move to Austin, Texas, for work, to become a professor at UT Austin, which had a lot of advantages for me because it's just a great university, and the people here very kind of in sync with what I do. So it was a great opportunity. But at the same time, I realized that, now my daughter was a bit older, I had time to play some Scrabble. So I decided to start playing in Austin, and I had met Becky Dyer at a Las Vegas tournament just before I stopped playing. By the way, I think Becky should get more shout outs for when the discussion comes around to top woman player, which
sure, absolutely.
I think she gets overlooked. She's a great player. And I just emailed her and said, "Hey, Becky, I'm in Austin. Do you want to play some Collins?" And she said, "Sure." And it turns out we live like 2 minutes from each other. So I just started playing her, and then that got me back to playing Scrabble and going to tournaments.
Right. Well, and there's an Austin club and a tournament scene in Texas. I mean, we're going to talk later in the show about, I guess the Austin tournament is this weekend. Are you playing?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. It's great. Austin club actually, again, it's been in different places, but right now it seems to, for a while, it's going to be on this road, which again is only about 2-3 minutes from my house. Now, there's only really Gene MacArthur who plays there, who plays Collins regularly. So I usually go play Gene, but then family duties, I can usually only stay for a couple of games, so I have to come back. Yes. But it's great to have the club. The club gets about 15 people each week. Very well run by Matt Canick. And
absolutely.
The Texas tournament's big. It's I think 60-something players.
That's right. That's what I saw on Cross Tables earlier. So fantastic.
And Austin's well situated because people will drive from San Antonio, Houston, Dallas. Yeah. It's all within 1 to 3 hour drive. So Austin's a great place for it.
That's one of the things that we put in the ad for tonight was talking about your journey from England to New York to Texas. And all three of those places are, Scrabble hotbeds. Yeah. So what would you say? Texas is a place that I still haven't been to for Scrabble, right. But at some point I will make it down. I've never been to Texas, period. Right. I pretty much don't go anywhere unless it's for Scrabble these days. But definitely I can see a Scrabble trip in my future, tournament, club, just to see people, go visit Chris Cree, stuff like that. So tell me about the differences between the New York scene and the Austin scene.
Well, I have a biased version because I can only really tell you about Collins so much, right? Because I play Collins. And what happened in Collins was that I switched in New York, and there was really nobody else that played Collins. It was such a silly thing to do, switch, really, because there was no one to play with. And so when I actually left New York, then everybody started moving to New York to play Collins. So now there's Cesar, Mina, Jesse.
Yeah, that's right.
And then Tim Weiss started playing kind of after I stopped playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I missed out on and in fact, Cornelia's first New York tournament was 1 block from my apartment, my old apartment. So that was bad timing on my behalf. In Texas, the Collins players are quite few. I'd say Texas is very TWL heavy.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's Becky, Jean, myself, and Rashid in Dallas, and we're all playing in the Austin tournament. But there's a lot of TWL players, and there's some very, very good players, obviously, in Texas.
Yes.
Obviously, you mentioned Matt Canuck, Chris Cree, and there's others as well.
Yeah.
So it's good. And Texas has its own Texas Hall of Fame and things like this.
I know.
So
it's awesome, for sure. So let me ask you this, just because obviously some of your moves have come because of your career, and you've talked about being a professor. So what's your area of expertise? You talked about being a scientist and a professor. So give me a little bit of that, because I always think it's interesting to see, what type of individuals, what people's backgrounds are. Yeah.
Well, I teach mainly statistics. So I teach a lot of stats and computer programming as it relates to statistics. And I'm brutal at counting. I'm so bad. I think I played Evan Borowski in a game in New Orleans recently, or was it Nationals? And I must have spent 3 minutes trying to count just on the board at 25 points or something, and I kept getting it wrong, and he kept saying, no, try again. And when I get past 100, I struggle. I'm okay up to 100. And then over 100, and I lost a game in Minnesota recently by 2, but I'd actually won it by 22. But anyway, I'm bad at counting, but I teach statistics. My research is, I mainly study social dynamics. I study aggression, and I study, but mainly in animals, and about how individuals form dominance hierarchies. I'm very interested in dominance.
So have you seen any parallels in the Scrabble world?
We have our alphas, don't we? And we have a ranking system that tells us where we all are, and we know our place. So no, I don't know. I think Scrabble players by and large get on pretty well. There's not too many conflicts. I have a research project I'm interested in doing with Scrabble, which is I'm very interested in winner and loser effects. So I don't know if you know what these are. A winner effect is when you win at some description, and then you get a boost from that. You get like a confidence boost or a motivational boost, and you're more likely to win the next contest. And the loser effect is the opposite, where if you lose, you can go on these losing runs. I think we all kind of experience that.
Like going on tilt. That's what people talk about a lot now. Yeah,
for several games. So, we see that in the animal world. You can see that in all kind of human interaction contests. So I think the data are out there. I think that'd be pretty cool to look at in Scrabble, because I know I go on these tailspins sometimes.
Absolutely.
I don't really go on many winning surges. I'd like to do more of that. I go into tailspins.
Nice. Well, I have certainly had my fair share of those. As you can see, my lower third says Scrabble enthusiast. Whereas
I'm a Steve.
That's right. You're a Steve, because I believe your peak rating is 1761. So you didn't quite qualify for Scrabble expert under there. But one of those E's, I believe, stands for expert. So not bad.
At Nationals or at Niagara, I remember looking at the little monitor at some point, and it ticked up to 1801. But
the winner benefit didn't kick in at that point.
No, bad second half in Niagara.
All right. Now, speaking of recent tournaments, the one that I continue to be fascinated with, partially because never mind never playing it. I'm never going to be invited. I don't play the lexicon. That would be a very minor reason I'll never be invited. But I wanted to share a couple of quick things that I saw on your Facebook page. So I'm just going to get that set up here. And actually, what we'll do is we'll show these full screen. So this was a really cool board that you posted.
This was a good game.
Yeah, were you in this game?
Yeah, this was me against Nigel Richards. I think he might have missed the H back hook to octopus. Could have played phone or something. But I really needed to go to the bathroom in this game, so I played Tanner, leaving an A on. I think it was an A on my rack, so probably missed some bingos there. And when I came back, Nigel was a former Nigel. He was a no longer with us Nigel. Something had happened, so it was a mystery, but we worked it out. We worked out who killed Nigel.
I see. Well, regardless, this was a really cool board that you posted. This is en route to Hood River. Give us the story behind this photo.
This was so it was snowing. You can get that from the snow. And actually, we got there. I can't remember what day. We went maybe Friday night, and then overnight it snowed a lot more. So we're up a. I wouldn't say mountain. We're up a very steep incline on this lodge, and the driveway had kind of snowed over. And Pete Armstrong and Chris Leip were staying at Pete's house and coming in on the morning, but their car got stuck somewhere down the. Shall we say mountain for more dramatic effect? It got stuck down there. So my car that I rented had managed to get up the hill the previous day. So Randy and I went to try and rescue Chris and Pete with a shovel and a car. And we got to them, we found them, and then we started trying to get back up the hill. And at some point, we were actually not going up the hill, but we were actually going back down the hill.
I see.
And my car, despite me hitting the brakes, I live in Texas. I drive in Texas. I'm not used to snow. And I was going the wrong way up the hill, and I wasn't needing to go that way. And then Chris shouted, "Put it in drive." So I did. And we made the decision, we're not getting up the hill in the car. So then cavalry was called, and Mark Francillon and Jesse Day came. Because Chris has injured his foot. He couldn't walk. Damn. So he wasn't getting up the hill, and clocks had started.
Wow. Is it?
We didn't know if they'd started the clocks. So Jesse actually Sherpa'd him, piggybacked him up the hill, and I guess Mark just cheered them on.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was heroic by Jesse there.
You also made a post from that tournament about the murder mystery that was planned for that night, which sounds like a great after-hours event. What are the highlights from the murder mystery at Hood River?
Well, first thing to say about Hood River is Jennifer and Evans put so much work in. It was an amazing tournament, my first one there, but they really did an amazing job. So Jennifer had given us all these sheets. I have my sheet here actually. See, it says confidential, so I can't really tell you about it. But everybody has a kind of a motive for murdering Nigel, and we all had to, we split into 4 different teams. We all had to go around the house or the lodge finding clues and trying to solve anagram puzzles and other little puzzles. It turned out some of the people were double agents, so they were actually trying to, kibosh the whole thing. But in the end, Will Anderson, with his robot that he played against, managed to do Nigel away. So if I was Nigel, I'd be watching Will like a hawk. Future tournaments.
Beautiful. Well,
very fun.
Thanks very much for the color on Hood River. For those that don't know what it is, it's really 20 really high-end Collins players getting together and staying in lodge together for, I guess, is it 2 nights, 3 days, something like that?
I think it's 3 nights. I can't
3
remember.
Nights? Okay.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, yeah.
And just fun stuff and Scrabble and all that kind of stuff. I remember you saying it was an interesting experience being in close quarters with everybody. Yeah,
I was in the old guys' room. There's me, Dave Wiegand, Mark, and Walker. Yeah, okay. I thought maybe by osmosis some of the Scrabble knowledge would rub off on me, but it didn't.
All right. So listen, what can we expect in the future from James Curley? Do you have any? We know you're playing this weekend. Are there any other tournaments you're looking at? You're kind of, Texas isn't so far away from Reno. Is that on your radar at all?
Yeah, I'm playing Reno. I decided I'm definitely going to do Reno. So that's probably the next one after Austin. I've got a lot of work. There are some really great tournaments, Niagara and New York, but I have work commitments, so I can't make them. The other one I'm looking at in the summer is actually debuting in England. I'm going to play a tournament in England.
Fantastic. A homecoming.
British Masters in the luxury resort of Milton Keynes is where I'm planning. Yeah.
Sounds great. All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you very much for joining me. I think we all got the benefit of knowing James a little bit more, which is great. And I can't wait to see you in Reno. And I appreciate you coming on. Okay.
Thanks very much.
We'll talk to you soon, James. And what we're going to do now is close the show with a couple of quick updates here. Let me just get set up here. And number one, we were going to try to get David to join us tonight, but that didn't happen. We had some connection issues. When I talked with him originally, it was the big story was that he was quite tired after both organizing and playing in that initial Pacific Coast Open, which I felt the same thing after Kingston a couple of weeks ago. Here are some upcoming tournaments that I would recommend you check out. We're talking about Austin this weekend with over 60 people. This weekend also features Charlottesville, and then we've got Poughkeepsie coming up the following weekend. It looks like I'm going to be going down there to provide social media coverage. Also that weekend, I think Poughkeepsie's up to something in the high 50s in terms of number of people playing. We've got the Purple and Green going on that same weekend over in Michigan. They're in the high 40s, I believe. And we got to get Dan and Joyce Stock on this program because they run some really fun themed tournaments. Then we've got, speaking of West Coast Scrabble, because we were talking about the Pacific Coast Open, we've got one day in Sacramento. Then we've got a Calgary Spring Tournament coming up the end of March. That's another Scrabble area that I hope to get to at some point in Western Canada. And then we've got the Boston area tournament, and they are open and accepting registration. So I would encourage you to check those out. As always, support your Scrabble directors. They're working hard trying to make some fun times for you. I also want to especially thank everybody for tuning in tonight. But I also want to thank our very special birthday babies. So let's talk a little bit about Scrabble birthdays. These are people in the Scrabble community who had their birthday in the last week. If you want to have your birthday mentioned on NASPA Tonight, the way to do that is to become Facebook friends with me. So happy birthday to Yvonne Lobo, who drove me all over the place and will continue to do so heading down to Poughkeepsie, to Kevin Bowerman, to Sohaib Senaula, to Tina Yates, to Judy Roman, to Marty Gabriel, who we talked about on this show, to Portia Zwicker, to Marcia Gillis, to Sule Lamitu, to Ed Horsch, to Kaveri Raviraj. I'm probably murdering that. I'm sorry, Kaveri. To Zev Kaufman, who's a frequent viewer of the show and commenter, to Valeria Kovacs, to former guest Jesse Matthews, to Jamel Arabia, to Linda Oliva, to Steve Pellinen, to Doug Brockmeyer, and a very special happy birthday because it's today to Margot Kuno. Again, I want to thank you all for joining tonight. We're going to be back next week with a brand new guest, brand new topics. And thanks everybody. Keep playing Scrabble. All right, until next week. Good night.